Oh yeah, the return of Carne is still the first course. My triumphant return to Provincetown. Halfway through the program at CIA came the following summer, newly invigorated with obscure cooking terms. The professional chef and the LaRousse gastronomique under my arm and my head filled half-baked ideas and a few techniques I'd seen and maybe even tried a few times. I rejoined my old comrades at the Dreadnought, too much curiosity and amusement. A little knowledge can be dangerous and annoying, but I had actually learned some useful things. I've been working in the city weekends while at school. I could work at a station without embarrassing myself. And I was enthusiastic about my new, if modest, skills. I was determined to outwork, outlast, and every way impress my old tormentors at Mario. Dimitri, the pasta man, was years older than I was, then in his early 30s, running too fat, with chunky framed glasses and a well-tended handlebar mustache. He was markedly different from his fellow cooks at Mario's, born in the USA of a Russian father and a German mother. He was the only other cook in P-Town who'd been to cooking school, in this case, a hotel school in Switzerland. Though he claimed to have been expelled for demonstrating the twist in that institution's dining hall, I always doubted this version of events. He became a second-grade influence in my career. A mama's boy, loner, intellectual, voracious reader, and a gourmand, Dimitri was a man of historic, esoteric skills and appetites, a gambler, philosopher, gardener, fly fisherman, fluent in Russian and German as well as having an amazing command of English. He loved antiquated phrases, dry sarcasm, military jargon, regional dialect, and the New York Times crossword puzzle, to which he was hopelessly addicted. It was from Dimitri's fertile mind that much of what I've come to know as Mario Speak had originated. Brainy, paranoid, famously prone to sulking, he both amused and appalled his co-workers with his many misadventures, his effective mannerisms, and his tendency to encounter tragic-comic disaster. Fond of hyperbole and dramatic overstatement, Dimitri had distinguished himself after a particularly unpleasant breakup with a girlfriend by shaving his head completely bald. This would have been in itself a rather bold statement of self-loathing and grief, but Dimitri pushed matters to the extreme. The story went that he had no sooner revealed his snow-white skull to the world that he went to the beach, got drunk, and sat there, roasting his never-before-exposed to the sun's scalp to the July ultraviolets. When he returned to work the next day, not only was he jarringly bald, but his head was a bright strawberry red, blistered and oozing skullcap of misery. No one talked to him until his hair grew back. Dimitri saw himself, I think, as a Hemingway-esque, hard-boozing, raconteur Renaissance man, but he was completely under the thumb of his mother, a severe, equally brilliant gynecologist, whose daily calls to the Mario kitchen were much imitated. "Hello, is Dimitri there? Hello, is Dimitri there?" We met before, of course, the previous year when he known me, no doubt, as Mal. But I was a broiler man now, a CIA student, a curiosity. It was permissible for Dimitri to talk to me. It was like Hunt and Liddy meeting. The world would probably have been a better place had it never happened, but a lot of fun was had by all. Dimitri scared of the outside world. He lived year-round at the tip of the Cape, and he liked to fancy himself a townie. He did a damn good imitation of a local Portuguese fisherman accent, too. But Dimitri was, as the Brits say, quite the other thing. We'd have drinks after knocking off at our respective restaurants and try to outdo each other with arcane bits of food knowledge and terminology. Dimitri, like me, was a born snob, so it was only natural that when our Lord and Master Mario decided on 2 employees to cater his annual garden party, he selected his 2 would-be Escoffiers, the Dimitri and Tony show. Our early efforts were, in the cold light of day, pretty crude and laughable, but nobody else in town was doing pâté and croûte or galantines and aspic or elaborate child Freud presentations. Mario tasted his most pretentious cooks with an important mission, and we were Mario tasked his most pretentious cooks with an important mission, and we were determined not to let him down, especially as it allowed us time from our regular kitchen chores and all the overtime we needed. We threw ourselves into the task with near fanatical, once-in-a-lifetime zeal and prodigious amounts of cocaine and amphetamines. As a fly fisherman, Dimitri made his own lures. This obsessive eye for detail carried over to his food. For Mario's garden party, we spent days together in a walk-in refrigerator, heads filled with accelerants, gluing near microscopic bits of carved and blanched vegetables onto the sides of roasts, and poached fishes and fowls with hot aspic. We must have looked like crazed neurologists using tweezers, bamboo skewers, and bar straws to cut and affix garnishes, laboring straight through the night, covered with jelly. Sleepless after 48 hours in the cooler, we lost all perspective. Dimitri at one point obsessing over a tiny red foul mushroom in one corner of a poached salmon, muttering to himself about the distinctive white dots on the hood of Amanita muscara or psilocybin mushroom while he applied dust-sized motes of cooked egg white for authenticity. He buried all sorts of horticultural in-jokes in his work, already insanely detailed gardens of Eden made of leek strips, chives, scallions, paper-thin slices of carrots and peppers. He created jungle tableau on sides of hams that he considered reminiscent of Rousseau's better efforts or Gauguin like. When I jokingly suggested Moses parting the Red Sea on the side of a striped bass, Dimitri got a faraway look on his face and immediately suggested a plan. The Israelites in the foreground, we can use straws to cut the olives and egg whites for their eyes, but the Egyptians pursuing in the background, we could cut their eyes with bar straws, the zip sticks, so they're all smaller. You see, for perspective, I had to physically restrain them from attempting this tableau. We had been under refrigeration for 3 days straight when we finally collapsed in the Dreadnought's cocktail lounge at 4 a.m. Unshaven, dirty, and crazy, we woke up a few hours later covered with flies, attracted by the tasty protein-rich gelée that covered us from head to toe. The garden party was, to be modest, a smash success. No one in dowdy old Provincetown had ever seen anything like it. We became instantly notorious, and we made the most of it, printing up business cards for a planned catering venture called Moonlight Menus. The cards, commissioned from a local artist, depicted us sneering in toques. We proceeded to hand these things out to local businessmen, telling them blithely that not only did we not need or even want their business, but they couldn't possibly afford us, as we were easily the most expensive and exclusive caterers on the entire Cape. 2 highly trained specimens like us had more than enough business, thank you very much. I'm reading this shit fast. I hope if you guys are reading along that you guys are knowing what's going on. It's because I read this before. But fucking, I'm thinking about Anthony Bourdain like on a personal level, like he's my friend. Like fucking Bourdain, man. You fucking write so much. But I remember this part when I read it before, how like it became something good. Like the garden parties, like they do something. It was just, like a smashing success. I'm reading it, but I'm not as. I remember reading that about his life already. There was, of course, no business, but the strategy worked. In the coke-soaked final weeks of 1975 P-Town, there were plenty of local businessmen eager to impress their friends with an elaborate end-of-season bash. It's because I have so many other books that I'm so excited to read, so I'm trying to just get the ones that I have already, especially about the ones on business I'm going to be reading, so... And then I'm thinking about selling the water and stuff, so there were plenty of... I just got to take it slow, how I've been doing. I wish I would have started yesterday, but it's fine. I guess that happens, right? But we're just taking today. We're not rushing it. I'm gonna just sell it to who it's supposed to be sold to. I gotta look for who's buying. You have to look for who's buying first. There were plenty of local businessmen eager to impress their friends with an elaborate end-of-the-season bash, and we were only too happy to encourage them in even grander pretensions, filling their heads with names and dishes we culled from LaRue's, few of which we'd actually attempted, and quoting staggering prices. We knew well how much these people were paying for cocaine, and that the more coke cost, the more people wanted it. We applied the same market planning to our budding catering operation, along with a similar pricing structure, and the business was suddenly very, very good. In no time, we were able to leave our regular jobs at the Dreadnought and Mario's, lording it over our old co-workers in brand new Tony Lama boots and brandishing shiny new whoosh-off knives when we dropped off by for a quick visit and a gloat. Our customers were restaurateurs, coke dealers, guys who ran fast boats out to the motherships off Hyannis and Barnstable to offload bales of marijuana. We catered weddings, parties, and private dinners for pizza magnates, successful leather and scrimshaw merchants. All the while, I filled Dimitri's head with the idea that what we were doing here, we could do back in New York, only bigger and better. Ah, those heady days of happy delusion, spirited argument, grandiose dreams of glory and riches. We did not aspire to be new Bocuses. No, that wasn't enough. Jacked up on coke and vodka, we wanted nothing less than to be like Carne, whose enormous pieces, Montes, married the concept of architecture and art and food. Our work would literally tower over the work of our contemporaries. Space Needles, Towers of Babel, Parthenons of force meat stuffed pastry, carefully constructed new Babylons of barquettes. Vol au vents, croquembouches, the very words excited and challenged us to reach higher and higher. We had some successes and some failures. A steamship round, a whole roast leg of beef on the bone sounded like a good idea. It was, after all, big, until we overcooked it. An all Chinese meal we did was so overloaded with dried Szechuan peppers that we could hear the muffled wails of pain from the next room, and I recall with horror a blue wedding cake. Layers of turquoise-colored buttercream and sponge cake decorated with fruit that looked more like Siegfried and Roy's beach house than anything Carême ever did. But we did have some notable successes as well. Provincetown's first crown roast of veal with mushroom duxelle stuffing and black truffle-studded Madeira sauce for one, in our mighty Coliseum of seafood blanquette. The client was a restaurant owner, and we oversold ourselves somewhat. Committed to our pastry terror-dome, we soon found that there wasn't a mold quite large enough for this ambitious effort, but what we wanted was a tasty yet structurally sound Coliseum of pastry crust, into which we could pour about 5 gallons of seafood stew, and we wanted the whole thing to be covered by a titanic pastry dome, perhaps with a tiny pastry figure from antiquity like Ajax or Mercury perched on top. We didn't know if the thing could be done, other than in the old engravings from the Rus. We never seen anything like what we were attempting. There was no suitable spring-form mold, something we could line with foil and fill with beans and then blind bake. We couldn't cook it together with the blanquette. It would never hold. The bubbling valette suspending our medley of fish and shellfish and wild mushrooms would make the walls too soft. And the dough, what crust could support the weight of 5 gallons of molten stew? As game time approached, we were getting worried. We set up our operations center in our client's restaurant kitchen and promptly bivouacked to a bar from some serious strategizing. What do you say? We promptly bivouacked to a bar for some serious strategizing. In the end, as it often does, it came down to Julia. Julia Child's recipes have little snob appeal, but they also tend to work. We took a recipe for dough from her book on French cooking, and after rubbing the outside of a larger lobster steamer with shortening, stretched and patched our dough around and over it. It was exactly the opposite of the prevailing wisdom. Fortunately, we didn't know that at the time. For our dough, we used the top of the pot, and the same principle, laying our dough over the outside of the round lid and baking it until firm. When we finally slid the things off very carefully, I can tell you, Dimitri was characteristically pessimistic. Would it hold? He didn't think so. It was a lot of stew we were planning on pouring into this thing, and Dimitri was convinced it would crumble at the table mid-meal, boiling hot fish and lava-like valouette rushing onto the laps of the terrified guests. There would be terrible burns involved, he guessed. Genital scarring, lawsuits, total disgrace. Dimitri cheered himself up by suggesting that should the unthinkable happen, we were obliged, like Japanese naval officers, to take our own lives. Or like Vattel, he submitted, he ran himself on his sword over a late fish delivery. It's the least we could do. In the end, we agreed that should our Coliseum of seafood blanquette fall, we simply walked quietly out the door into the bay to drown ourselves. Party time came and we were ready, we hoped. First there were hors d'oeuvres, microscopic canopies of smoked salmon, cucumber, and caviar, Dimitri's chicken liver mousse with diced aspic, little barquettes of something or other, deviled eggs with fish roe, a lovely pate and croûte with center garnishes of tongue, ham, pistachio, and black truffles, and an accompanying sauce, Cumberland, I'd lifted right out of my CIA textbook. Our crown roast was no problem. It was a blanquette that filled our hearts with dread and worry. They should have just scrapped the blanquette. But God protects fools and drunks, and we were certainly both foolish and drunk much of the time. Things went brilliantly. Our Coliseum's walls held. The crown roast, decorated with little frilly panties on each gracefully outward arching rib bone, looked and tasted sensational. We were given a standing ovation by the dazzled guests and grateful client. That's sick. When we next showed up at our old kitchens for our weekly gloat, our heads were too big to fit in P-Town's doors. We were already planning on hunting bigger game. We had newer, more sophisticated, even richer victims in mind for our learn-as-we-go operation in New York. All right, that was the end of that one. It's crazy because the man in Rich Dad Poor Dad says a lot of our best decisions, like don't go into something already fucking. Don't go into something like it's better to go into something with confidence and no second thought about it, even if you're stumbling. You know, that's how you learn to ride a bike. You know, because I thought there was something beautiful in that book. You know, in the Rich Dad Poor Dad, there was something amazing in it. I said that anyway. Peace.